What if Luffy was never born in One Piece? What would happen to the Straw Hats, and who would eventually become the king of the pirates? Well, to figure all of this out, we gotta go all the way back to the beginning, starting with Ace and Sabo, because Garp will still be looking after Roger's son Ace and eventually drop him off with Dadan on Dawn Island. Ace will then of course meet Sabo, which he did without Luffy anyways, and they would still train, fight, and steal together just like they always did. They'd also share their sake cups and become official brothers, just this time without Luffy. The Great Terminal Fire still happens, and Sabo can't stand his family, what they've done, or his own noble bloodline, so he sets sail. But he and his ship still gets blown up by the Celestial Dragon, and he's once again rescued by Dragon and joins the Revolutionary Army. But continuing with Ace, and his story changes a lot. Yeah, we all remember that Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, aka the Nika fruit, right? Well, Shanks originally wanted to give this legendary fruit to Ace before Luffy just ate it. Yeah, just look at their faces, they're shocked. But yeah, Shanks wanted Ace, Roger's son, to inherit the fruit and become the next Joy Boy. So now, with Luffy not there to eat it, Ace would have the power of rubber. But even with rubber powers, Ace's journey is pretty similar from this point on. He would still set sail as a pirate at 17 because of Sabo's death, create the Spade Pirates and become its captain, eventually get defeated by Whitebeard, and once again become a member of the Whitebeard Pirates. Oh, and Shanks wouldn't lose his arm. Anyway, we'll come back to Ace later because we've now reached the current timeline. And if Luffy wasn't born to set out at sea as a pirate and randomly show up in a barrel by the Alvida pirate's ship, the first character whose life would be completely different is Koby. Yeah, remember that Koby was stuck as the cabin boy of the Alvida pirates, until Luffy popped out of that barrel and sent Alvida flying. But without Luffy there, Koby would have been forced to stay on Alvida's ship and scrub the deck for a very long time, until he eventually straight up gets killed by other pirates as he can't fight back. So this timeline without Luffy has already turned really dark. But moving on, what would have happened to Alvida if Luffy didn't send her flying? Well, she never would have eaten the Sube Sube no Mi, meaning no insane glow-up, and definitely no joining the Buggy Pirates. She would have just stayed as the captain of the Alvida Pirates, smacking her crewmates around with that giant iron mace, and stayed this big forever. But talking about Koby and Alvida, the next character whose fate is basically doomed without Luffy is Zoro. Yeah, remember when we first meet him? He's tied up by the Marines and starving, as he's waiting out a 30-day punishment from Helmeppo, who promised to let him go if he survived without food for 30 days. But yeah, Helmeppo never intended to let him go. So without Luffy there to set him free, Zoro wouldn't be able to break out on his own, as he's so weak from starvation that he can barely move. Which means Zoro will either starve to death, or Helmeppo will just finish him off himself. Yup, that's two of Luffy's close friends dead. But continuing with the story, and we now reach Orange Town, where Buggy and his crew are causing chaos. Without Luffy around, Nami still escapes, but Buggy ends up taking over the whole town since no one's there to stop him. But yeah, Buggy eventually gets captured by the Marines and thrown into Impel Down. Moving on to Usopp and Syrup Village, and here things go insanely bad. Yeah, Usopp overhears Kuro's plan to take over Kaya's fortune and that he's the captain of the Black Cat Pirates, so he runs through the village screaming that pirates are coming. But of course, no one believes him. And then, Kuro and his crew wipes out everyone, including Kaya and Usopp, who was trying to run away. So Kuro takes over the village, steals Kaya's fortune, and then he actually kills his own crew so he can live happily ever after. So yeah, Usopp never becomes a brave warrior of the sea, and Yasopp is now the happiest guy ever. Next up, we're heading to the Baratie, where Sanji is cooking up some 5-star meals and flirting with customers. Now, just like in the original story, Don Krieg and his crew shows up to take over the restaurant. But just when it seems like Krieg will win, Mihawk shows up out of nowhere and completely wipes out Krieg and the rest of his crew. Since Mihawk wanted to finish off his mission, he started on the Grand Line. After that, Mihawk has a nice meal before heading out like nothing happened. As for Sanji, he stays at the Baratie and works as a chef for the rest of his life. Yeah, I know some of you might be thinking, but Sanji will still be forced to marry Pudding. Well, not really. Because if Sanji never joined the Straw Hats, Judge wouldn't even know he's alive. He only finds out his son is still breathing after Sanji gets his first bounty. So yep, Sanji will stay on the floating restaurant forever. But that also means that Judge and the Vinsmokes would still be wiped out by Big Mom and the Big Mom Pirates, since Judge would still want to somehow arrange a partnership with Big Mom, and Big Mom would want Germa for herself. So Sanji would actually be the last Vinsmoke standing. Anyway, let's go back to Nami, who has returned to Arlong Park. But without Luffy there to eventually take down Arlong and free her from his tyranny, Nami's life will turn into a nightmare, because Arlong will eventually discover her secret stash of money. And just like before, Nezumi would show up and take all of it and ruin her only shot at freeing Kokoyashi Village. So Nami just completely breaks down, and Genzo, seeing her pain, would rally the villagers to attack Arlong. But yeah, they will all be crushed like nothing, including Nojiko. And with Nami nowhere to run, Arlong would keep her locked up and force her to keep drawing maps alone in that room at Arlong Park forever. Now, finally reaching the Grand Line, and the first character we meet here is, of course, Laboon. But yeah, poor Laboon will keep smashing his head into the reverse mountain until he eventually dies from his injuries. And someone else who actually might die is Chopper. Because on Drum Island, Chopper will stay with Dr. Kureha and still see himself as a monster and an outcast. But don't forget that Wapol will return to Drum Island, and when he does, he'll kick Kureha and Chopper out of Drum Castle. And although Chopper will fight back, he can't take Wapol down. If he survives this battle, he'll stay hidden with Kureha and live under Wapol's rule all over again. Now, reaching Alabasta, we've got a lot of characters to talk about, like Crocodile, Vivi, Cobra, and of course, Robin. Because without Luffy there to fight Crocodile literally 3 times, Crocodile will succeed in taking over the entire Alabasta kingdom with the Baroque works. And in the war for the kingdom, Crocodile will kill both King Cobra and Vivi. Then, just like the original, Crocodile will find the poneglyph in the secret chamber under Alabasta together with Robin. But when he demands she read it and reveal the location of Pluton, Robin straight up refuses. But that means Crocodile kills her as well. Yeah, everything is just going downhill, and Crocodile is now the new king of Alabasta. But alright, let's talk about Enel, because he'll now finally wipe out all the Shandians and the Skypians, and eventually just leave for the moon anyway, together with his men. Next up, we've got Franky, and he's still going around Water 7 being a total weirdo. But eventually, Lucci and the CP9 find out he's got the Pluton blueprints. But as Franky doesn't want these blueprints he got from his former master Tom to fall into the wrong hands, Franky once again burns them right in front of Lucci. Unfortunately for Franky, Lucci snaps, transforms into his leopard form, and takes Franky out on the spot. Another Straw Hat we've got to talk about is Brook, because as we all know, this guy is completely lost in the dark out in the Florian Triangle. But what will happen to him? Well, you might think he'll just be lost in the Florian Triangle forever, or you might think he somehow makes it to Thriller Bark, but if he does, Ryuma will just finish the job and slice him down for good. But neither of these things will happen, and I'll explain why. Because you know Moria is building his army of zombies, he's just waiting to find a shadow strong enough for zombie ores. So without Luffy, Moria would find someone else's shadow to use. And once Zombie Ores is up and running, Moria will take his army and storm Wano to take down Kaido. Yep, if you didn't know, Moria and Kaido are actually rivals, and Moria absolutely hates him. Anyway, Moria will storm Wano with his army, but Kaido will completely destroy him. So now that Moria is gone, Brook will actually get his shadow back. But what happens now? Well, Brook will probably go on to live his best life as a rock star, since we all know this guy knows how to rock. Now we gotta get back to talking about Ace, and his story is still pretty much the same. As I said, he once again joined the Whitebeard pirates, and after Blackbeard killed his crewmate Thatch, Ace goes on his revenge journey to hunt Blackbeard down. Eventually, Ace finds Blackbeard, and they have their intense fight. However, even though Ace got his rubber powers, he's still not stronger than Blackbeard. So Ace loses the fight and once again gets handed over to the Marines and eventually ends up at Impel Down. Talking about Impel Down, we have to talk about Jinbe and Ivankov, because without Luffy showing up and starting a wild prison break, these two are still stuck in this hellish prison. Well, at least Jinbe is, because Morley will show up and break Ivankov out, as Eva is a revolutionary. So yeah, Jinbe's stuck at Impel Down forever. Oh, and don't forget that Bon Clay will also be stuck at the prison since he never found Ivankov. And yeah, Buggy won't escape either. But staying at Impel Down, we also gotta talk about Blackbeard. Because don't forget that the Blackbeard pirates literally broke into the prison just to recruit the level 6 prisoners for his crew. Although they really didn't have to break into the prison since Luffy was already causing chaos and distracting everyone. Anyway, even if Luffy wasn't here, the Blackbeard pirates would still go to Impel Down and recruit the level 6 prisoners. But once again, they would have to get past Magellan. But yeah, Magellan is just OP, so he will easily take them down with his poison. And since he's now not in a hurry to chase after Luffy, he's putting the whole Blackbeard crew behind bars. Alright, once again back to Ace, because as he's been captured, the Marineford War still happens. So the Whitebeard pirates arrive and give it everything they've got to save him, but without Luffy and the other escapees showing up to help free Ace, the Marines will win. Yep, Ace will still die, and Whitebeard loses his life as well, this time at the hands of the admirals. Shanks will also show up to eventually stop the war, but he's way too late. Now, some of you might say, wait, wouldn't Shanks have shown up way earlier since Ace has the Nika fruit now? And yeah, you might be right, but I don't think so. I mean, Luffy's been on the brink of death too many times to count, and Shanks has literally almost never been there to save him. Anyway, Ace is now dead, but the story continues into the new world. Because now we gotta talk about Shirahoshi, as at Fishman Island, Hody Jones succeeds in taking over the island since Luffy and the gang aren't there to stop him, and things turn dark. King Neptune and Shirahoshi's brothers will all be killed, and Shirahoshi, well, Hody wants to use her power to take out all humans in the world. But as Vanderdecken is obsessed with her and wants to marry her, he will straight up just ask her to marry him, but Shirahoshi will of course refuse, and he will absolutely lose it and take her out. After that, Hody will take out Vanderdecken for screwing up his plan. However, since Fishman Island is Big Mom's territory, she will send Katakuri and his brothers to clean up this mess, and they will absolutely destroy Hody and wipe out anyone associated with him. So Fishman Island will still be under Big Mom's rule. Moving on, we've got Trafalgar Law, and this guy will still become a warlord and eventually go undercover at Punk Hazard, working with Caesar. But when Law once again runs into Virgo, who literally squeezes his heart, his cover is blown and he gets thrown into a cage. And just like that, Law's entire plan to take down Doflamingo is wrecked. But things get way worse, because Law will end up captured and tortured by Doflamingo, who wants him to perform the perennial youth operation on him so he can conquer the world and rule over it forever. But yeah, Law will of course refuse, so he will eventually end up getting killed by Doflamingo. Talking about Doflamingo, he'll still be the king of Dressrosa and making smile fruits for Kaido. And while we're in Dressrosa, we gotta talk about Rebecca, as she'd still be stuck fighting in the Colosseum day after day. But eventually, she'd face someone way too strong and die in battle, being laughed at by everyone. And let's not forget poor Mancheri. She's still locked up by the Don Quixote pirates while Leo and the rest of the Tontada tribe are helpless, with no idea how to save her. After Dressrosa, we gotta talk about Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, because Jack will still come to Zou looking for Raizo. But of course, they will refuse. However, as Chopper, Caesar, and the others aren't there to save the Minks from the poison gas attack, the Minks won't make it. So Jack and the Beast Pirates wipes them all out, and after scouring the entire island, they will find both Raizo and the Road Poneglyph. Moving on to Wano, and without the Ninja Pirate Mink Samurai Alliance, Kinemon, Momo, and the other scabbards would still give it everything they've got to take down Kaido. But let's be real, they're not winning that fight, so they'd all end up defeated. That means Kaido's new Onigashima project would go off without a hitch, moving the entire island of Onigashima right onto the Flower Capital, putting all of Wano under the control of the Beast's pirates, and turning the whole country into a lawless pirate paradise. So yeah, for the people of Wano, life would still be a total nightmare. But then, things get wild as Kaido and Big Mom go to war over Whitebeard's territory. And with Big Mom using Germa's tech and Kaido having his army powered up by the Smile Fruits, it turns into an absolutely brutal showdown. But in the end, Kaido comes out on top, managing to beat Big Mom and takes all of her territory on top of Whitebeard's. That's when Kaido officially becomes the most feared man in the entire world. That pretty much just leaves Kaido and Shanks left, oh, and of course the Revolutionary Army as well, but honestly, it doesn't even matter what happens next. Because without the Nika fruit and the return of Joy Boy, the world government and Imu would eventually wipe out anyone who opposes the world government and end the pirate era for good. So yeah, if Luffy was never born, things would be a complete disaster. Zoro, Usopp, Robin, and Franky would all be dead. Sanji would still be stuck as a chef at the Barati. Nami would be trapped under Arlong's tyranny forever. Chopper would still think he's a monster. Jinbe will be rotting in Impel Down. And Brook, well, he'll actually be a rock star. Anyway, what do you think would happen to everyone if Luffy wasn't born? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and watch this video next.